They arrived in light. Dozens of shimmering vessels broke through the upper atmosphere like falling stars, each one shaped with elegant, impossible symmetry. Floating cities forged from light and gravity. The skies above Earth pulsed with iridescent energy as the Galactic Concorde made its first official contact with humanity. They expected awe. They expected tears. They expected primitive minds to kneel before divine forms. What they got was protocol. The ships were guided, not by scattered armies or hopeful mobs, but by a coordinated global response system. Airspace cleared, orbital paths assigned, communications routed instantly, a sterile welcome, efficient and controlled. The Concorde's lead vessel, Gerald Vothra, pride of the Fifth Enlightened Dynasty, settled into low orbit without fanfare. On the ground, a delegation of Earth's finest waited at the edge of a vast tarmac in northern Canada. The humans stood straight, their uniforms immaculate, faces impassive. Military, diplomatic, scientific, all in one tightly organized line. The Concorde's emissaries descended in a radiant beam of gold and violet. 7 beings of impossible grace hovered above the platform. Bodies tall and willowy, eyes shimmering like liquid metal, skin like polished crystal. Their translator halos hummed softly, already sensing with Earth languages. They expected guests, a tearful welcome, perhaps a child offering flowers. No one moved. General Akira Monroe of the United Earth Strategic Defense Corps stepped forward. Her boots clicked sharply against the polished floor. On behalf of humanity, she said, "Welcome to Earth." There was no tremor in her voice. No wonder, no fear, just professional formality. The lead emissary, a being known as Sirenkel, tilted its luminous head slightly. "Curious," it said in perfect English. "You are calm." "We've had visitors before," Monroe replied. Sirenkel blinked. "No records indicate prior contact with Concorde civilizations." "That's because they didn't come from the Concorde," Monroe said. "And they didn't come in peace." A flicker passed between the alien envoys, subtle, like ripples on still water. Sirenkel recovered quickly, voice smooth. "We are not here to conquer. We are here to enlighten, to uplift." Behind Monroe, a human scientist leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "They always say that." Sirenkel floated forward, eyes scanning the gathered humans. "You do not kneel. You do not chant. You do not marvel." Monroe offered a faint smile. "Would you like a tour?" There was a beat of silence. Then Sirenkel nodded. "Very well. Perhaps your wonder has simply not yet awakened." As the alien delegation followed the humans toward the transport craft, one of the younger Concorde envoys whispered telepathically to its elder, "They are not what I expected. I feel no awe from them. Only calculation." Sirenkel's response came cold and certain. "They are hiding something." High above, cloaked satellites adjusted their lenses. Deep underground, massive databanks began compiling alien movement patterns, and just beyond the moon's shadow, something far larger than any Concorde ship stirred in silence. It hull dark, its weapons systems warming. The Concorde came to impress, but Earth wasn't waiting to be impressed. Earth was watching. And Earth remembered. The tour began in Geneva. It was the designated world capital for extraterrestrial diplomacy, a neutral ground. Glass towers stretched into the sky, surrounding the Concorde envoys with a curated blend of Earth's finest. Autonomous skykars hummed silently overhead. Environmental drones adjusted the weather in real time. Energy-efficient glass glimmered like diamonds in the sunlight. Sirenkel floated above the smooth pavement, expression unreadable. The humans walked. They never floated, never flaunted. They let the aliens do the showing off. The Concorde envoys began their performance. With a flick of the wrist, one conjured a 3-dimensional map from thin air, displaying real-time simulations of gravitational flows. Another dispersed a cloud of microscopic drones to repair a broken street lamp, reshaping its frame molecule by molecule. Pedestrians barely glanced up. A human teenager jogged by wearing noise-canceling headphones. A nearby vendor selling synth coffee rolled her eyes and muttered, "Tourists." Siren Kell frowned. "These are the marvels of 1,000 civilizations," it said, gesturing to the dazzling display of particle manipulation and energy reformation, technologies refined over eons. You appear unmoved. Dr. Sienna Ortega, Earth's top xenotech liaison, adjusted her glasses and nodded politely. "Your tech is beautiful," she said, tapping into her wristpad. "Though we do have questions about your control medium. You're using tactile neural weaving, correct?" "Bioharmonics." Siren Kell paused. "You recognize it?" "Not exactly," she admitted, "but it resembles what we developed for our Mars terraforming arrays. Different application. Same resonance pattern." Another envoy, a glitter-skinned being called Valtesh, let out an involuntary chime of disbelief. "You achieved bioharmonics independently." "We reverse-engineered it from our deep-sea adaptive habitats," Ortega replied. "The oceans forced us to innovate or die." Siren Kell narrowed its eyes. This species wasn't just clever. It was resourceful. On the next stop, the Concorde conjured a flawless replica of Earth's moon in the air above a plaza, perfect down to the last crater. Children didn't cheer. They pointed out inaccuracies. "That crater's off by 8 kilometers, one kid mumbled to his sibling. "Old data set." At the Museum of Human Innovation, the Concorde offered the gift of a thought stone, a device that stored and shared emotion as tactile memory. It was meant to inspire awe. Instead, the curator thanked them and placed it beside an Earth artifact, a charred, cracked CPU salvaged from the first AD war on Luna. The plaque read, "This chip held the line during the blackout. Half our fleet ran on it. It shouldn't have worked. It did." Siren Kell stared at the simple metal fragment for a long time. "This is crude, but it saved billions," the curator said simply. "No pride, no drama, just truth." As the aliens moved on, a low-ranking Concorde aide whispered, "They are either ignorant of our superiority or hiding strength." Another answered, "They act like titans in disguise. It is unsettling." Up above, one of Earth's orbital monitoring stations silently tracked the Concorde and voice flight patterns. Subroutines recorded frequency harmonics, propulsion trails, biometric readings. The humans were cataloging everything and offering nothing. As the sun began to set over Geneva, a strange chill settled over the Concorde delegation. They had come to show Earth what true power looked like. But it was becoming clear. Humanity had already seen it and survived it. The invitation came that evening. An audience within the floating Concorde consulate ship, anchored in low orbit just beyond Geneva. A structure of translucent crystal and flowing energy, it pulsed like a living thing against the edge of the stratosphere. General Monroe arrived with Dr. Ortega and a small diplomatic team. They were escorted down vast, gleaming corridors where gravity bent gently and ambient music resonated directly in the bones. The ship was a marvel, designed to impress. It was working, on the Concorde, at least. Siren Kell stood at the head of a round chamber shaped like a starburst, each spike representing a member species of the Concorde. Only one seat remained unlit, the one prepared for Earth. The alien emissary gestured magnanimously. "We welcome humanity to the edge of a new epoch," it declared. "You stand at the threshold of enlightenment, of harmony, of safety." General Monroe gave a slow, courteous nod. "We appreciate the invitation." Siren Kell's voice softened, but carried an unmistakable edge. "But we are concerned. Your people seem unguarded, unaware of the dangers beyond your local system. There are species that would not offer peace, factions that see flesh as fuel. There are anomalies that devour suns. You cannot possibly face such threats alone." The words hung in the air like a warning wrapped in silk. We've been alone for a long time, Monroe replied. We've managed. Valtesh, another Concord envoy, leaned forward, almost pitying. And how many died to that stubbornness, human? How many more will fall before you accept our protection? Dr. Ortega bristled. We didn't ask for protection. But you need it, Serenkel pressed, voice honeyed with arrogance. Let us install stabilization beacons in your outer system. Let us upgrade your planetary shields. Let us help you, before it's too late. Monroe stared across the chamber, her voice calm but flinty. Tell me, Serenkel, when was the last time the Concord fought a war? The question caught them off guard. War is uncivilized, Valtesh said. We do not resort to such measures. Monroe nodded slowly. So you've never had to defend your own planet, never lost a city, never had to rebuild from ash. A flicker of discomfort passed across several alien faces. We've preserved peace, Serenkel said stiffly. And we've survived without it, Monroe replied. Silence settled in the room like dust. Then Serenkel smiled again, just a little too wide. Perhaps you will reconsider after we show you what real power looks like. Tomorrow, we will demonstrate our tactical fleet. You will see what stands between the Concord and galactic chaos. General Monroe's eyes narrowed, her voice quiet but firm. You're welcome to show us your fleet. She stood to leave, pausing at the threshold. But you might want to brace yourselves. Serenkel blinked. For what? Monroe glanced over her shoulder with the faintest ghost of a smile. For when we show you ours. Above Earth, deep in the shadow of Mars, the first human dreadnought began powering up. Silent, watchful. It was almost time. The next day dawned over the Atlantic in a brilliant blaze of orange and gold, but all eyes were on the sky. From a high orbital platform hovering over Earth's equator, the Concord assembled their delegation. Observers, ambassadors, even high-case strategists who rarely left their core systems. This was meant to be an exhibition of supremacy, a gentle reminder to the humans of just how vast the galaxy truly was. Serenkel stood beside General Monroe on the viewing deck, smiling with polished confidence. Our ships approach, it said, gesturing toward the edge of orbit. A standard peacekeeping armada. Limited armament, of course. This is merely symbolic. From the void emerged 6 vessels, elegant and impossibly sleek, their hulls shaped like crescent blades, glowing with soft blue engine light. They coasted effortlessly through space, accompanied by silver drones that spiraled around them in a graceful ballet. Dr. Ortega raised a brow. Beautiful design. They are optimized for minimal collateral. Serenkel said. Our battles are precise, merciful. General Monroe merely nodded, saying nothing. Then she tapped a small worn metal badge on her uniform. A quiet chime echoed across the deck. Nothing happened, at first. Then space shivered. One by one, black shapes appeared on the far side of the planet, emerging from localized distortion fields. No lights, no glow, just presence, hulking silhouettes, matte black and angular, as if the void itself had grown teeth. The Erebus-class dreadnought appeared first, a jagged triangle 2 kilometers long, armed with enough kinetic weaponry to crack a moon. Beside it came the Vindicator, the old warhorse of the Martian campaigns, still scared from a plasma breach that burned half her hull. Then came the Hades, silent and sleek, bristling with stealth drones, its AI core rumored to have survived a consciousness fracture. 11 ships in total. Not for peacekeeping, not for ceremony. These were killers. The Concord envoys stiffened, their projections momentarily flickering. These are war vessels, Serenkel said, voice tight. You asked what we'd use to fight a planet killer, Monroe replied, stepping closer to the glass. There's your answer. But these are not ceremonial, Valtesh stammered. Why would you? Ortega answered calmly, because our enemies weren't ceremonial either. The human ships began a silent maneuver, forming into combat formation without a word. No broadcasts. No announcements. Just clockwork precision. Simulated targets appeared on the Concorde's display grid. Asteroid-sized constructs, moving at random. One by one, they were erased in seconds. No delay. No mercy. Kinetic rods traveling at 20 kilometers per second lanced out like divine punishment. Smart munitions weaved through microgravity fields. Drones formed swarms and consumed their targets with mathematical efficiency. No wasted movement. No wasted shots. Just war, done the human way. The room fell deathly quiet. Saren Kell stared at the scene, unable to speak. Monroe folded her arms behind her back. We didn't come to brag. We didn't come to flex. We came because you invited us. But don't mistake our silence for absence. She looked Saren Kell dead in the eye. You asked to see our fleet. You didn't ask what it's been through. Above them, the black ships drifted silently, watching, waiting, and very much ready. The Concorde delegation was silent as the last of the simulated targets evaporated into stardust. The viewing deck, moments earlier a place of gentle arrogance and easy smiles, now held an invisible weight, dense and cold. The humans stood like statues, offering no applause, no satisfaction. This wasn't a performance for them. It was a memory. These weapons, Veil-Tesh finally said, voice thin and hollow, they are overkill. Dr. Ortega looked up from her datapad. You think those are the heavy ones? She wasn't joking. Saren Kell's expression cracked at last. The beam that once radiated superiority now looked cautious, concerned. Your world does not match the profile, it said, almost to itself. You were supposed to be primitive, struggling, on the brink of unity, not already living it. Your species is wrong. General Monroe's voice came low and even. Or maybe your database is outdated. She stepped toward the glass, the void reflected in her eyes. You think we clawed our way to space because it was easy, that we built our colonies and fleets out of joy. We built them out of necessity, out of fire. The Concorde emissaries tried to recalibrate, scrambling to understand. But your species suffered constant war, internal conflict, civil divisions. It should have weakened you. Monroe gave a humorless smile. It tempered us. Behind her, a small holoprojection flickered to life. Gritty footage from the siege of Phobos. Human soldiers fighting in zeroed trenches, their faces gaunt but eyes burning with resolve. Another clip showed the Pacific blackout, when Earth's orbital grid was hacked and the planet went dark for 12 days. And still, humanity held the line. Saren Kell stared, as if seeing the species for the first time. You endured all that. Alone. We were never alone, Ortega said softly. We had each other. And when the stars finally opened to us, we remembered. She looked the alien straight in its glimmering, silver eyes. You think the galaxy is dangerous now. You should have seen it before we started cleaning up. A whisper passed through the Concorde's psychic link. Dread. Genuine, unfamiliar fear. This wasn't a primitive species ascending toward the light. This was a battered soldier stepping out of a storm. You built weapons for conquest, Monroe said, voice steely. We built them because we had no other choice. Saren Kell opened its mouth to speak, then paused as another alert chimed through its neural link. One of the Concorde vessels had attempted to scan the Erebus-class dreadnought. The scan had been blocked. Not jammed, refused. The AI had recognized the probe's signature and sent back a simple, chilling reply. We see you too. The Concorde ship immediately shut down its own sensors. In a far-off star system, Concorde strategists were already flagging humanity's files as reclassified. Not a protectorate. Not a client species. A contingency threat. Saren Kell said nothing more. But deep inside, the envoy understood what the rest of the galaxy had failed to predict. Humanity hadn't survived the worst. It had trained in it. The Concorde summit reconvened the next morning. But the tone had shifted. Gone were the displays of galactic grandeur, the floating holosymphonies, the radiant fountains of light and gravity, the echoing mantras of harmony above all of it stripped down, subdued. A subtle panic pulsed beneath the surface. The Concorde had seen Earth's fleets. Now it wanted Earth's compliance. Saren Kell opened the session with measured calm. "We wish to revisit the terms of our proposal," it said, seated now rather than floating. "Our original offer of integration remains, but we understand your people may prefer a more autonomous partnership." General Monroe leaned forward slowly. "That depends. Are you still assuming we're a danger in need of containment, or are we equals now?" The room was silent. Dr. Ortega glanced around at the gathered envoys. "Let's not pretend. You're not here just to uplift anyone. You're here because you've managed to maintain order by selecting who gets to rise and who gets to remain beneath you." Veltesh shifted uncomfortably. "That is an oversimplification. It's a system of curated hierarchy," Ortega interrupted. "We've seen it before. Ours just wore different clothes. Empires, alliances, coalitions, whatever the label, it always came down to who held the stick." Saren Kell tried to steer the moment. "Then what do you propose, humans?" Monroe tapped a small console on the table. A new projection appeared, an unmarked star chart. "These are the graveyards," she said. "Ships, stations, civilizations, places we found burned and broken long before we arrived. You think your Concorde preserved peace? No, you just didn't go far enough. You left systems to rot if they didn't fit your model." Ortega stepped in, voice steady. "You created unity by ignoring suffering." She pulled up another file. Images flickered. Humans landing on shattered worlds, evacuating war-torn colonies abandoned by the Concorde centuries ago. In sum, the humans were the only light in the darkness. "We didn't want an empire," Ortega said. "We became something worse, a reminder that you could have done more." The Concorde delegation was stone-faced, processing. Monroe rose to her feet. "You want to talk about unity? Then understand this. We don't bow. We don't kneel. We remember every name we lost getting here, and we build not just for survival, but so no one else has to go through what we did." Her voice dropped to a low, heavy whisper. "We aren't looking to join your Concorde." She paused. "We're here to change it." The words landed like a blade on a banquet table. Sharp, final. In the shadows of the chamber, several lower-tier envoys looked to one another, uncertain. For the first time in living memory, the Concorde had encountered a species it could neither sway with gifts nor silence with fear. And perhaps worse, some among the Concorde agreed with the humans. A fracture had begun, not of war, but of thought. By the end of the summit's second day, the Concorde's inner council was in chaos. What had begun as a routine induction, another primitive world offered security in exchange for submission, had spiraled into something far more dangerous. Earth hadn't just refused to kneel. It had held up a mirror. Across Concorde space, the reaction was immediate. Not panic, not outrage, doubt. On the colony world of Cyril, a minor species long used to servitude under Concorde guidance paused in their daily rituals to watch encrypted broadcasts of the human summit speech. The words echoed in their minds. "We don't kneel. We build so others don't have to suffer like we did." On Telun IV, a mid-tier Concorde engineer defected to the human envoy ship, requesting asylum. "They taught us to believe we needed them," he said quietly. "But you remember pain. That means you're honest." The Concorde scrambled to contain the fallout, deploying messaging dampeners, flooding the newsnets with counter-narratives. They labeled Earth a rogue element, a threat to unity, a danger to stability. But behind closed doors, whispers grew louder. "You saw their fleet. They held back. They warned us. What if they're right?" In the Geneva delegation compound, General Monroe stood at the edge of the balcony, staring up at the stars. The Concorde's crystal ship still loomed above, glowing like a frozen sun, but it no longer looked invincible. Dr. Ortega joined her, datapad in hand. 10 more defection requests, she said, not all from minor species. Some are Concorde staff. Monroe nodded slowly. And their leadership. Doubling down. They want to paint us as isolationists, that we're too volatile to integrate peacefully. Monroe cracked a thin smile. They're not wrong. We didn't come here to integrate. She turned to Ortega. Send the transmission. You sure? Monroe stared toward the void. They need to know they're not alone. Ortega tapped the pad. Moments later, a pulse left Earth's orbital relays, encoded, fragmented, and scattered across subspace. A signal aimed not at Concorde High Command, but at the fringes, the discarded, the forgotten. The quiet resistance. It was simple, a full record of Earth's history, not polished, not sanitized. The wars, the losses, the rebuilding, the raw truth. And with it, an offer. You are not broken for fighting back. You are not unworthy for surviving. You are not alone anymore. Back in Concorde space, that signal arrived like a spark on dry leaves. Minor species began asking questions. Mid-tier civilizations started to request access to human databanks. Some sent thanks. Others sent coordinates. But one thing was clear. A shift had begun. And not even the Concorde could stop it. In the skies above Earth, the Erebus turned slowly, engines humming like a heartbeat. Watching. Waiting. The storm wasn't coming. It had already started. In the heart of Concorde Prime, where silver towers floated among the clouds and decision-makers hadn't faced a real threat in centuries, panic had finally taken hold. The humans had not declared war. They had done something far worse. They had inspired. The ripple effects of Earth's transmission were now a wave, one the Concorde couldn't contain. From the outer colonies to the sheltered inner worlds, more and more species were demanding access to unrestricted human archives. Military logs, survival manuals, even philosophical treatises on freedom and resistance. What began as curiosity had become a firestorm of awakening. Some called Earth dangerous. Others called it a miracle. In the Concorde's High Council chamber, Serenkel stood before the gathered elite, its once pristine composure cracking. We must act decisively, it urged. The humans undermine our cohesion. Their defiance spreads like a virus. They disrupt the very fabric of order. But the room didn't respond with unanimous agreement as it once had. One of the elder envoys, a crystalline being from the Arun continuum, spoke gently. Perhaps it is not defiance we fear, but truth. Perhaps the order we preserved was never peace, only stagnation. The room fell silent. Serenkel's eyes glowed brighter, as if trying to reignite certainty. They would tear down everything we've built. General Monroe's voice echoed from the central projection. She stood on Earth's surface, framed by wind and sky, no throne behind her, just open space and a rising sun. We don't want to destroy what you've built, she said. We want to fix what you forgot. She stepped forward, her voice calm, but unshakable. You left entire systems to rot because they didn't meet your standard. You abandoned the messy, the damaged, the imperfect. That's not peace. That's cowardice. Images flashed behind her. Humans fighting alongside alien civilians on ruined planets, delivering aid to broken worlds the Concorde had declared irrecoverable. We remember what it's like to lose everything, Monroe said, and we swore we'd never let anyone go through it alone again. Then she made the offer. Join us, not as rulers, not as subjects, as survivors, as rebuilders, as something new. Across the galaxy, stars lit up, not in fire, but in signal. Worlds long ignored lit their skies with human beacons. Old Concorde worlds hesitated, then slowly followed. A new network formed, not through control, but through consent. The Concorde didn't fall in battle. It unraveled in silence. Not from violence, from choice. Back in orbit above Earth, the Erebus powered down its primary weapons. Not in surrender, but in peace. It had stood ready. But it hadn't needed to fire. The war everyone feared had never come. Because when the galaxy looked into the eyes of humanity, it didn't see a threat. It saw a reflection. A bruised, stubborn, relentless will to endure. And, for the first time in millennia, the stars felt wide open again. They thought we'd be amazed. Then they saw our battleships. Now they're following our light. And the galaxy will never be the same.